Perfect.
Amazing. Well, welcome everybody. I'm really excited for this special WEAll California event. For some of you, I think you will have been part of this series that we've been showcasing different state level economic systems change networks over the past few months, really exploring kind of the good, bad, and ugly of trying to organize these kind of movements within the United States and sharing lessons, asking questions. And WEAll California has been amazing in terms of being the host for these discussions. And so, really excited that this final one we can showcase WEAll California itself and the incredible work that they've been doing. Pretty much since I joined WEAll, WEAll California was one of our first OG hubs and definitely our first representation within the United States. And I can't even begin to express what incredible work David has done to really help to amplify and spread the message of the well-being economy, to bring people together, to share best practice. And it's just been so exciting to also be able to have Kirsten, who's joined in and is bringing a wealth of incredible experience. I'm sure she'll speak about it more, but an incredible personal story, of working within the environmental sort of space and just really understanding we got to get to the root, which is our economic system, and coming back to California and really wanting to support that work. And she'll share more about really exciting guide that she's developing, which is going to be for mayors and other municipalities to really think about practically designing the economy in ways that are fit for not only the challenges ahead, but for the kind of flourishing society we want to have in the future. And I'm absolutely overjoyed to have been able to connect with Lauren as well, who's leading on building a guide related to business and the well-being economy, which is, how do we really make sure that our business actors are active driving for social and environmental regeneration. And so without further ado, I want to hand it over to them to share more about their work. And then to my brilliant colleague, Anna, who's going to be leading the time with the Q&As to bring some specific questions that we've been asking pretty much all of the different groups, and then opening it up to everybody to hear your questions and thoughts as well. So thank you so much, everyone. And I'm really looking forward to hearing from you.
So I guess it's me first. I thought maybe Anna was asking a question, but I forgot that it's so different now that I'm on the other end of the camera, so to speak. Yeah, so we're entering our sixth year, and it's been very challenging. As I watch Vaduma and Joelle and Amanda and so many others present, mostly I was feeling envy all the time as I was listening to everyone else and going, "Oh my God, they've done all these great things that we didn't do or we should have thought to have done." But it's been very much a roller coaster, jagged edge, up and down. A lot of people who started the hub are no longer here. And so I joined at the first public meeting in November 2020, and there was like 70 people, and it just kept whittling down and whittling down. Um, and the concept has been how to get people of different networks to work together. And I thought, okay, that sounds super easy. Let's just do that. And I think we encountered all sorts of obstacles. And especially last month when Molly from Reimagine Apologia presented, I was just like so envious of all the things that she was saying and the things they had done. And fortunately, I was able to have lunch with her last week and go through, like the challenges or the differences between the community she's serving and California. And I think, a lot of it is California's 40 million people. People are already super engaged in a lot of networks. Climate is very big. And there's also some tensions about, um, you know, who are you to come in and try and organize people? Like, we've never heard of you. So I think it's just been a whole mix of different strategies trying to get more awareness of the term well-being economy, and also how does that compare to degrowth or donut economics or regenerative economics or circular economy, and trying to just popularize the term and helping go out. So our first project was in the city of Pomona, which is still going, and Laura's here. She's been part of that for a long time. And we've got another event coming up in May. And, it's been, as Laura can attest, start and stop, and a lot more challenging than maybe we originally had hoped. And Doug's here. Doug's been very instrumental in getting a project going in the Inland Empire. And having, someone like Doug, who's a great networker, who's able to go out and just really connect with people and explain it. And Doug has, a long time experience in well-being on campuses. And so he's really just well versed in this framework. So I think that to me is sort of the takeaway from the last several years, is finding connectors who get the concepts, are passionate about it. Lauren, Kirsten, and I are volunteering for this work, and so I think it's really just finding people who resonate with the concept and trying to build off of that. And, as I've said, we've experimented with going in this direction and that didn't work. Let's try going in this direction. Or maybe we had more success than we thought, so we go back to the first direction. Um, so I'll leave it at that and let Kirsten go next and describe some of what she's doing. So.
Thanks, David. Yeah, David's been just the hub of the hub. He's been an incredible leader for California and producing hundreds, I think, of events now at this point. And kudos to you. My name is Kirsten Maynard. I'm based in Santa Cruz, California. And just a little bit of background about me. After years of working in renewable energy, climate tech, and guiding venture capital into the sector, I moved to Washington, D.C. to work on shifting local, state, and federal climate policies toward regenerating Earth's living systems. And in DC, I lobbied for nature and built a movement around urban nature-based climate solutions that helped to raise funding for nature in the Inflation Reduction Act. I also, during that time, joined and was a founding cohort member of the Deep Adaptation Leadership and Climate Extinction Program. And I continue to explore the techniques to handle the grief and anxiety, honestly, that people are feeling and experiencing in economic and climate collapse. So that is really important to me and what drives a lot of my work. I moved back to California last year to focus on new economic models that prioritize the well-being of people and planet. And I really believe we have an opportunity now for systemic shifts towards a more ecologically centered civilization. So part of that involves accelerating civic and community assemblies to hear from Californians what a well-being economy means and how the needs of the people and planet can be prioritized in each unique community. And that's what's really special about this movement, about the Well-Being Economy Alliance and everything that it puts forward, is that it's honoring the uniqueness of each community. And that's, I think, a critical component to how we build the future. So toward that goal of hearing from communities, I'll be working this year on a program to expand collaboration to advance well-being in California, kind of what David was explaining about getting the word out, helping communities understand what the movement is about and how they can start to shift things. So last year, David and the team hosted a number of in-person, what were called chips and salsa events in six Southern California communities. And residents were able to share ideas and solutions about improving their local well-being. So each event had its own character, its own focus, but a lot of common themes emerged, and the need for affordable housing, stronger social safety net, ecological restoration, and inclusive civic participation were some of the emerging themes out of that. And a lot of new partnerships and projects emerged directly from these dialogues. So in 2026, this year, we're going to be expanding these kind of casual events into community assemblies in 3 cities. And this is going to be a chance for residents to start to build and create locally relevant definitions of well-being, what well-being means to them, and begin to prioritize areas for continued focus. So, we'll see where housing, healthcare, food systems, worker ownership, and independent business comes to the fore. So this program is just going to is beginning now, and you'll be hearing more updates about this initiative in the coming weeks and months. So stay tuned for more on that. Another project that I'm going to be working on this year is a city and county guide to the well-being economy. So last year, David and the team put together a really helpful local guide to the well-being economy. And that was really popular with a lot of downloads, and it really seemed to get around to quite a few people and communities. And so building on that, I wanted to put together a guide for municipal decision makers, so mayors, city, county policymakers, to help equip them with some practical approaches that align economic policy with real outcomes that communities care about. So building on the local guide that was put out last year, the policy platform that is evolving currently in California for our California hub, and then helping cities and counties actually translate well-being centered ideas into actionable policies on the local level. So looking forward to putting this guide out. We'll be probably offering opportunities for folks to comment on that or weigh in. The guide is hopefully going to help city and county leaders move beyond sort of the short-term fix toward more durable solutions that improve quality of life and strengthen the economy on a local level, and really hopefully ensure shared prosperity within planetary boundaries is my hope and goal for that program. So really excited about the activities this year. So thank you, and maybe turn it over to Lauren, I guess.
Please.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lauren. I am pretty new to WEAll California. I just started getting involved in the past few months. And as a new person, David, I think you can release all of your guilt because there's a lot going on and it has taken me a while to get up to speed. So a lot of really exciting stuff. So my work with WEAll, well, maybe a little bit about myself. So I come from an entrepreneurship and a social entrepreneurship background, working in support organizations as well as starting some of my own organizations and helping other people start organizations. And yeah, I was really, and I studied economics as well as systems change. And so this work is really kind of right up my alley. And so, yeah, I was really excited to bring that experience to WEAll. And my work is focused on how are we making businesses create, as Kirsten said, durable changes and structures so that we're not forcing these one-off decisions that go against the grain and are really difficult. And, we have to go against the incentive structures that are in place, but instead create incentive structures for ourselves that align with our values. So we'll be talking about everything from governance models to ownership models to supply chain things. And yeah, there's been a lot of really exciting interest in the work, so I'm excited about that. So we'll produce a toolkit focused towards businesses who maybe want to align with a well-being economy, but aren't exactly sure what tools are available to them. So it'll be kind of like a menu of options for them and provide them next steps on where to go and who to talk to on implementing some of the ideas that might work for them. And yeah, there's been great interest. So we're starting up a working group in the next few weeks. Some of our lovely members are on this call. It's good to see you all. And yeah, that's where we're at for business.
And I would
Amazing.
just add that, as part of being the WEAll Hub network, that there's opportunities for collaborations with Australia and New Zealand and other groups that are working on it so that we're not just doing it in isolation, but as a collective, and trying to, maybe see things that we might not see from a certain perspective. So trying to, I think, in all the different guides and toolkits, trying to make the creation of them collaborative as well, as opposed to, here's two or three people telling you what you should do, but, here's what all different sorts of organizations and, using that, I think one of the main things we're trying to do is building everything through the lens of how do we get more collaboration between the existing groups. Instead of it's about being representing what the people who are volunteering for WEAll doing, getting the different people who are in a network or members to participate and to get to meet each other and to collaborate. And that's an essential part of each of the projects.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. I have so many questions, but obviously we will just let everybody reflect on everything that you shared and ask the questions that you want. I will just honestly would like to start, first of all, by congratulating you all for the amazing work that you do. It's wonderful that you developed the guide and the toolkit, because that's pretty much something that we hear every day, that people don't want to be told about what to do, but if they want to, how they can get into that direction. And a guide and a toolkit, it's the perfect way to do it, just for them to have available resources, and then they would be able to adjust it, obviously, depending on their context. So really well done for all the work that you are doing. I would like to start with a question that, David, you mentioned at the very beginning about the changes within the team, that probably the people who have been involved in WEAll California at the very beginning, they are no longer part of the core team. Other people have joined since then. And that's something that I feel many groups and networks at some point they have to deal with. Like, how exactly do you manage these changes? Because new people usually mean different direction or different strategy for the network. So how do you really manage to stay true to the vision that you had at the beginning, but at the same time be quite open to new ideas, suggestions, and new directions?
Do I have an hour to think about that before answering? I think people have left and come back. One of the people who was supposed to be here today, Jesse Green, was gone for about a year and then came back with more energy than ever. Alyssa and Megan, who aren't here today, sort of pop in and out depending on what their schedules look like. And Jeremy and Andrew, who I consider like the real founders of the hub, are still participating at lighter levels. They haven't completely gone away. So I think there's just like, from the majority of people, there's a still belief in the vision of, trying to make society better. And because, some people are employees of Ecosiv or were employees of Ecosiv, and have moved on to other things. Some people are busy with, so their own personal lives and the direction of their lives sort of takes them in different directions, but there's still a support for the general idea of how do we expand the concept to more people? How do we get more people in the network? So for most of the people, it's very easy to reach out to them and say, hey, what do you think about this? Or are you available for that? And even though the answer may be no, it's oftentimes yes. So I think the understanding that I had when I joined, and also from WEAll Global, is it's about bringing people together because you have more power together. And that, if you want to support, for example, there's so many things in California that do not get passed at the state level. And it's just shocking to me when you see the poll numbers for these items are sky high, but you can't get them passed. So I think it's just really a key point that it's not just about the specifics of a specific topic, but how do you build the power to get that change happened? And that I think will only happen when more people are working together. And so I think that's the main vision is, how to get things. Ideas already exist. It's just creating the willpower for the change that is the hard part. And so I think most people in the group are aligned with that.
Thank you. That's beautiful. So I would like to open the floor to everyone who would like to ask a question, but I can see that we have Joel and Faduma from the Puerto Rico group. So I don't know if you have any question, Joel or Faduma. Joel, I'm afraid we cannot hear you.
Yeah, you're off mute, but we still can't hear you.
How about now?
Yes, now
Very
we can
good.
hear you.
So hi, I'll
Hi.
do a quick question. David, you mentioned that you tried many things and then iterated and moved here, moved there. What was the worst thing that you did, or the one that you
Other
think
than
that
showing up
you
today to be
won't do
interviewed?
that again?
Yeah.
And another curiosity I have is about the governance model for the hub. How do you make decisions together?
I don't know that any decision was the worst decision by a stretch. I think there's things that maybe didn't catch on at the time we did them. So, for example, one idea was to create a local leaders forum where people who were doing on the ground work in Pomona, in San Bernardino and Santa Cruz and other places would come together once a month to share ideas. And the attendance was very spotty. At the time that we started, it was right when, the really intense immigration raids started happening in California. So that really took a lot out of the different local groups because they were just having to completely rethink things. And so even though people were supportive of the idea, and we kept meeting for 8 or 9 months, but attendance kept dwindling. At a certain point, just decided to put that program on hold. So I don't think it's a bad idea. I still think it's got a lot of value. It just didn't happen. So I think that's an example of the sort of thing I was talking about. And governance, as Anna and I mentioned, people have come and gone from the hub. So sometimes it's just been me. So decision making is very easy when it's just one person. But trying to really make it a group decision. For example, this week, one of our partners, Common Cause California, asked us to support a bill. And so I sent out a letter to the group asking if everybody supported it and to hear back if they did or didn't. And so, it was a pretty easy thing. I think in general, we just put things up for a vote when needed, but often people are doing their own projects and doing it in their own style, trying to encourage them to do something on their own. Like Lauren or Kirsten, you want to add anything to that, or?
I'll just add that David really has his finger on the pulse of a bunch of movements in California and a whole range of organizations that are doing amazing things. And it's really valuable to have this connector, in our midst who can identify things that we might want to amplify and focus on and put those forward to the group. And then I think a lot of the decisions seem to be made, with the group of us really discussing it together on a weekly basis. So it's lots of discussion and kind of making sure that we're hearing about all of the things that are happening and then prioritizing how we want to be involved or help amplify or help accelerate some of those things out there. So it comes down to really, I probably 6 years, I guess, David, of you being able to kind of really observe all of the things that are happening in California and really tap into what's emerging.
I'll
Go ahead, Lauren. I'll go after you.
Okay. I want to just totally agree with everything that Kirsten said. David is very intelligent or wise, I would say, in the space and like kind of knows what's needed from who and what would be a good role for us to fill in the space. So that's incredibly helpful. And especially since I've started working there, David, you are very good at empowering people to kind of take initiative and do what they think is best. And so, like in my experience, you're great at providing advice when I ask for it, and then you say, do what you want with this information as long as, it's aligned with us, then go make it whatever you want it to be. So I think that there's a lot of empowerment of everyone who just wants to be involved to kind of take it in the direction that they are passionate about. So
Okay, I have to deflate what they're saying because it sounds like way too much praise. It hasn't always been that way. There has been in the past conflict and things like that. I think where we get into it the most has usually been wordsmithing, oddly enough. That people get very attached to wording and how things are worded. And so that's where I think maybe what Lauren and Kirsten are reflecting is trying to let go of that and just let someone do it, even though it may like really sting me to see something written a certain way. It's just like, hey, I would want that flexibility if I was writing something to put it in the language I like. But I think most of the other stuff we're pretty aligned on. And maybe that comes from the fact we're operating a little differently than some of the other networks that went and really trying to more connect groups to each other, which have different agendas, and maybe some are about climate, some are about employee-owned things. And really, it's trying to be creative about how to get people together and show up because everybody feels my sense is everybody's so overwhelmed and has so many options. Like there's probably 10 other webinars today you could go to. And there's different meetings and so forth. So how to do something that makes people feel like they want to come. And I guess I would add one more thing is trying to make sure that in general, we don't do podcasts. We don't do like YouTube videos. We do things that are like this where people are coming together and participating and trying to really make people turn on their brains and feel engaged and that they get a chance to participate. And that I think is a key element. So.
It's a key element and a challenge always, right? How can you make sure that you create this space for people to participate? So I would like to invite everyone who has, or anyone who has a question. Paduma.
Thank you, Anna. David, it's great to see you. Thank you for sharing. I had a question around engagement and sort of sustaining momentum, but you sort of answered it in the previous inquiry from Joelle. I want to shift to more of an example here I'm seeing in Washington as we're trying to sort of align coalitions and sort of partners, that there are other sectors that are also pursuing well-being. Health zones is one of them, where hospitals are leading some of the civic work as well as they're thinking about just beyond just providing healthcare. And we've been thinking about how to build alignment and sort of start collating so that one, we can share lessons, but also there's an ecosystem where we can track well-being across housing, healthcare, transportation, and those myriad other ways. Obviously, we are not as big as California. So I'm curious to learn from you how you're doing some bridging with other aligned I would say focuses, but on a different sector.
Sure. Well, you guys are doing amazing work, and thank you for when you presented. I learned a lot. Um, I think um, it's been a lot of just cold calling and reaching out to people. And I would say that 90% of people don't respond at first. There's sort of a sense of like, I don't know what this is. I don't know who you are. And then every now and then you sort of strike gold. We had a former volunteer who was with us for about 3 years, also last name Green, even though not related, Rex Green. And he found out, or I told him, I don't remember the genesis, about a hearing that was going on in California. And one of the speakers was Doug Everhart, who's here. And so I don't remember if it was me or Rex who first reached out to Doug. But I was very lucky that Doug responded. We met, and Doug has introduced me to dozens, if not, 30 plus people, and gotten really involved. And so I think it's, just persistence and serendipity and finding, like I said earlier, Doug just fully gets these concepts so completely, and has moved into a space in his life where he has more time to contribute and pursue. And through Doug meeting other people who so I think it's just that multiplier effect of I come from a variety of other industries and businesses where, networking and meeting people was sort of needed for that industry. So I've just sort of applied that here, and I genuinely like meeting new people and learning about them and seeing what they're interested in. But I would say there's thousands of emails that were unanswered. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'll just add that it is overwhelming, the number of organizations doing great work in California. It's such a huge state and such a large population and spread over such a large region. Like it can be overwhelming. And so every day is like an adventure of who's doing what and learning about what's happening that's new. Um, And so I think what the Wellbeing Economy Alliance is great at is allowing people like, Lauren and me and David to just encounter what's happening and start to bring them in and figure out how they're aligned and where we are aligned and start to explore potential partnerships. So for example, there's an effort in Santa Cruz that's starting around survey research and well-being. So it really is sort of putting data as the backbone of well-being. Obviously, there's a lot of interesting connections potentially there. So that's an area where we're gonna, be figuring out, is there an opportunity to work together around data around well-being, and what does that mean? Could it lead eventually to a well-being index or other measurement opportunities that we have to really understand and collect the data around what people believe and think and want in regards to well-being in their community. So it's really hard because there's so many. They're just every day you just learn about like 10 new ones, and it's having grown up in California and left and then come back. It's a little bit different here than in other locations, and so it's a lot to kind of the landscape is crowded, but that means there's so many good people doing amazing work. So it's just a matter of kind of finding and bringing them in to the conversation.
And I'd add one more thing too, is that, for Duma, I have tried, to steer people who I find in Washington State to you and the different effort that you're doing there. And I keep finding more and more all the time. I think people are getting that all the different problems that we're encountering as a country and a world, they're starting to, I think people are coming together around the concept that everything is systemic and interconnected and that change needs to happen. So more people, I think, are drawn to this term of well-being economy as opposed to some of the other terms. And so as people are interested, they're sort of uh, coming together in pods, and then those pods keep enlarging as people find out about it. And so I think just um, that circle just keeps growing naturally as more people are interested. And I'm happy, to support what you guys are doing because I think you're doing amazing things.
I appreciate that. One thing I just want to share, I heard Kristen say about community assemblies. We were focused on sort of well-being, but we also found out that belonging is fundamental in terms of how people start to relate, and connecting well-being and belonging has really been instrumental.
Agreed. Yeah, I think that was my number one takeaway from the Chips and Salsa event. So Laura and Doug and Stacy were all, Julie were all part of some of the events that we did. And my major takeaway is that people wanted more time to connect with other people, that they wanted more than wealth. They were looking for time and the sort of time that allowed for local interactions and connection, what you're calling belonging. So yeah.
Thank you. Doug?
Yeah, thank you. Faduma, to answer your question in a different way, because I did a lot of work in university settings, and we had the same question you have, is how do we get people to understand well-being work? I think the big challenge in the United States specifically is that we're so embedded in a healthcare industry that dominates how people understand really health and wellness work. And it's based on the Institutes of Medicine protractor model, which is there's prevention, then there's illness diagnosis, and then there's treatment and recovery, right? So it's all about finding a deficit and then ways to treat and fix it. But so that's health and wellness work, which most people have a good understanding because we're just embedded in that system of thinking. But when you talk about well-being, there's many of us, and I helped start the United States Health Promoting Campus Network, which really moved us away from chasing kind of a deficit-based order. And it comes down to what you measure, right? So on campuses, we would measure what are the problems, what are the illnesses, what are the challenges students face, and then we would invest in ways to fix those challenges. And there's a difference between health promotion and then health education and prevention. So many of us grew up in the health education prevention world, but then we really realized to make a difference, information and education doesn't change behavior. It's really more health promotion and creating capacity and the setting and the environment that changes behavior and culture. And really well-being is about changing culture, right? It's about not looking at deficits, but what can we do to increase capacity for people to have a chance and capacity for well-being, including health and wellness measures. So from the built environment, from the policies, from the culture, from all of those things that contribute to a community or a setting, that's really what we look at. So we really, in the last 10 years, have focused efforts to look at campuses as a setting in this United States Health Promoting Campus Network, and what can we do as a campus to create the culture of well-being that gives people, students, faculty, staff, as well as other living beings, animals, plants, air, water, all of those things, a chance to be the best that they can be. So we're looking at measurements of flourishing and thriving and things like that, rather than what's wrong and fix it. So I think those two things are critical, especially as you talk about your coalitions are often around the healthcare industry. And those folks, again, have an understanding of health and wellness. But when you use the term well-being, it's really a paradigm shift into what you're talking about. It's not necessarily human behavior, it's more systems level thinking and what creates the environment that allows capacity for health and wellness, which is really what well-being is.
And I'll just quickly add, thank you, Doug. That's so important. And having spent quite a bit of time in DC, and working on social determinants of health, that is such a policy wonky term that doesn't mean anything to anyone that's actually in the in the population. So it's efforts around changing the language to like well-being is so much more accessible in so many ways than trying to parse out the social determinants of health and make that into a policy. I think what Doug is saying about, systemic change is a critical component to that, and well-being is that better, more encompassing term that that I think is really catching on right now. And maybe David can share a little bit about like, how this moment might be different from the last 6 years in terms of is there more talk about well-being generally now because of the situation that we're in the world? Or is there, is it another fad? Is it a trend? Or is this the path toward actual transformative change? So I don't know the answer to that, but I feel like it's a better direction to go toward well-being and all of the things that it means from a systemic point of view, rather than parsing out specific indicators in a policy wonky way.
Yeah, I think we're still several years from it being popular term, and that which is why our team has developed a t-shirt. We haven't printed them yet, but we're going to proudly wear them so that, like 15 years from now, we could all go, yeah, we were on the well-being economy team well before it became popular, like having that special t-shirt from a concert you went to before the band was popular. So we're working on that. You can place your orders at the end of the meeting. But also, I thought of the worst thing that we did, and so I can answer that now. We did a conference a couple of years ago in Sacramento that brought together a lot of people and created all this momentum around policy and well-being and so forth. But we named it, I use the word term we, even though it wasn't the we that's here today. We named it something else other than Wellbeing Economy Alliance, which really created confusion about, like it was off brand. And so the funding for that didn't continue. The people who were spearheading that didn't continue. So put all this energy into a project that then went nowhere. So trying to go back now to those people who were at that event to get them to participate became harder because they showed up, they participated, and they felt like there was no follow through. So I think the two things were making sure you have follow through and don't try and create a second brand that confuses people would be my takeaways. So
Thank you, David. Anyone else that has a question?
okay, we can wrap up early. No questions? Anna, you don't have any either?
I actually had a question. Sorry. So I was just wondering, I was just looking at the page and all the partners of WEAll California, and I was just wondering how, how big of an engagement is there with these partners as far as their activities, their events, or what WEAll California does, because ultimately it comes down to coalitions and things like that. And again, when we're talking about well-being, like it was discussed before, it's kind of like an umbrella thing, right? It just includes so many different things. That's why these coalitions become super important to kind of build momentum and impact and all that. So I was just wondering how engaged are we, or is, WEAll California with all the different partners that it's actually listed. Can you just like send an email, we're doing this, can you participate? Because ultimately that's the challenge, right? Is being able to build momentum behind whether it's a push for a toolkit or doing something in universities or pushing governments, local, state to do something.
Sure.
So yeah, I was just curious about that.
Yeah, thanks. That has been one of the more challenging aspects of what we've done. So that partners list pretty much comes from a letter we did to Governor Newsom about 3 years ago, where we asked people to sign on the letter to Newsom to create a well-being economy in California. And no one in his office responded to that letter. And um, I have been toying with the idea of, doing letters to the different people who are running for governor for California, asking them to embrace a well-being economy. And so, our mailing list at the time that we did the letter to Newsom was about 250 people, and now it's over 1,000. So, and, we've also done a lot more networking and participating in other groups' networks, not just them participating in ours. So I would hope that we'd get a lot more uh, partners, but we don't have any formal membership. It's, people can either be on the mailing list or not. We're also working on a statewide policy guide, which would be what are the different groups that are pursuing policies at the California statewide level this year. And so I've been working on that for 6 months with a variety of different groups. And the idea would be to showcase them and what legislation they're sponsoring or trying to get passed this year and in coming years. And, um, you know, going back to that conference that I talked about, trying to get a whole bunch of different groups with different priorities, different objectives, different budget areas, and so forth, to agree on here are the 10 policies that we want to pass for a well-being economy. It is like, throwing a whole bunch of kittens, no offense to cats or kittens, into a bag and trying to come out with something clear. And like I talked about before, wordsmithing could be one of the hardest parts. So when you're talking about legislation, wordsmithing is even more important in something like that. So the idea this time was to remove that barrier of trying to get everybody to agree and just to highlight what people are already focused on doing and getting them to agree to be side by side with other organizations in the guide without necessarily endorsing all the other policies are there, because then that would create a whole nother level of complication. So organizations have agreed, but again, there's no official membership, there's no official coalition. It's just show up when you want to participate. And I think, part of from what I know about you and your question is um, how do we leverage that when there's a really important piece of legislation coming up that we feel the coalition should support. So as an example, and I may have already mentioned this on the call, just this week, Common Cause California asked for our support on some legislation. And so the team agreed and signed off. So our team is endorsing that. We're not going out to the whole coalition and asking everybody to endorse it, but there might be other legislation. Well, actually, that's not true. I am going out to specific groups and that I think would be interested in that legislation and sharing with them in the hopes that their organization may also support it. So it's more of an informal process at this point rather than saying we have 300 members and we have to get 700% of those members to sign on. I know that math didn't work. Sign on. So it's more of an informal process. So we've got our team that might be endorsing something, things that we share out, but also I think most importantly is trying to lift up what the other groups are doing so that Climate Reality Project can see what Common Cause is doing, can see what poor people's campaign and trying to get them to endorse and support each other rather than it coming directly through us. Or at least that's how it's working at the moment. So.
And I'll just quickly add that this Governor Newsom did create a new department, which is I think is envisioning as a policy lab to source new policy ideas from all around the state and workshop them, incubate them, and potentially elevate them to statewide visibility and potential implementation. So that's very promising. That's new, and we've been in touch with that department, and it's interested in hearing what we are doing this year about the policy guide that David just mentioned, sourcing like policy ideas from some of the partners and collaborators in the Alliance, as well as the potential data that may be coming from our civic or community assembly program that we'll be doing this year. So, so very excited that California took that step, and I think it's going to potentially be very helpful to start to bring some of these policy ideas up to the state level more quickly.
Yeah, and I think what Kirsten and Lauren and I are all saying is there's a lot of great stuff out there already. The main thing is trying to really lift it up and mainstream it and make people more aware of it. You know, we had a group present a couple of weeks ago, Local Progress California. It's a national organization that creates policy, and they have a lot of detailed policy things that probably a lot of local legislators don't even realize is there. So, you know, in something like the local mayor's guide that we were talking about earlier, you know, lifting up that organization that's got all these great assets, not necessarily WEAll California creating the legislation, trying to lift up different organizations who are already doing amazing work.
Yeah, that makes sense because I mean, obviously there's all the different groups that we talk about. They sort of kind of overlap on a lot of issues. It's just a matter of finding those overlaps and then being able to kind of concentrate efforts on those specific things that overlap to be able to kind of push it up, whether it's local legislative or community actions and things like that. So I think that's the biggest challenge. And kind of going back to the conversation when you were mentioning the group was like 70 and then kind of decreased is, I mean, I've seen it, I'm sure everyone on the group has seen it, is, you know, people that really care about this stuff, they kind of join groups to be able to do something. And then, you know, it's kind of during the discussions, you know, and what to do and things like that. It might be not very focused at sometimes. Let's discuss what we're talking about, etc. And then there's just new ideas come on, and like the School of Moral Ambition is the last one that is just coming within in the same kind of idea. So there's this problem of attrition, right? And in order to kind of, I think, make a lot of these things that we talk about work is continuity, right? So people like, you know, staying at you know, the groups that they're in to be able to continue the work that they're doing and connect to the same people in other groups that are in a continuation process within their group. I think that's what kind of cements these kind of the growth that could happen between these different groups. Just the observation from past, I'm sure everybody had the same experience that they just, how do you make people stick, right? And I think it's actions, it's results, right? Like, you know, we can show you what we did. So if you kind of come in, these are the things that we did. We can show you the proof of the impact of what we did. I think there's a stickiness factor that kind of goes within all organizations, which is great because the discussions we've had with what Lauren's doing for the businesses, like the toolkit, what Kristen was mentioning about, you know, working on something to work with local and probably state officials. And
I want to give a moment
saying,
to Julie so she gets a chance to ask a question before we leave. But I'll add one more thing. It's not just getting things done. It's also and having some fun and enjoying yourself. That's an important part of well-being.
Yeah.
So trying to model that for other people, which is why I love trying to make jokes even though they don't work. Hi, Julie.
Hey, no, interesting conversation, lots of different threads. I'm thinking about, and I'm curious if other people are experiencing that, in LA specifically, given the immigration raids that have been going on pretty intensely since June, and then maybe in other parts of the country, it seems like, and for a number of reasons, everything that's been happening, it seems like mutual aid strategies are sort of having a resurgence, perhaps. More people really plugging in different ways. There's sort of all the political organizing, the groups, the indivisibles, and all the marches, etc. And then the desire for people to do something and kind of connecting those things in some new ways. So, having said that, I'm just wondering if other people are feeling like one of the opportunities of the time we're in now is in the US and in certain places within the US and within California, is to really kind of tap into those mutual aid networks and those sort of the resurgence of civic engagement that's coming from being sort of done to, and this sense like nobody's coming to save us kind of thing. So that was partly sort of observation and partly a question of are people seeing that in their places and how might that fit into this discussion? Thank you.
I'm near you, so I'm definitely am seeing it. I'm wondering, Kirsten and Lauren, if you have similar things going on, and because we're spread out. So
And like specifically with some of the rapid response groups is what I'm thinking about when I say mutual aid, and just seeing
yeah,
an amazing organizing to action and engagement of people across age spectrums and
yeah.
et cetera. So
I I
Absolutely.
haven't personally had a lot of interaction with those groups, but I'm very aware that they exist and know people who are very active in them. But Kirsten and Lauren, how about
I'll
you?
just briefly say, like, the Santa Cruz Monterey Bay area has a very diverse, demographic here, and there is a lot of ICE activity around. There are these networks are starting to come forward. I just attended an event. It was an art event, but we had somebody from Minnesota actually zooming in to tell us what they're doing and how they set up their networks. And it is incredibly important, and they still need a lot of help out there for that. But we are learning from them about what works and what doesn't work and how to get those things started. So I think there's a lot of interest in that.
yeah, I think the learning, and then maybe hopefully as things sort of die down, like looking for cross pollination and sort of expanding some of the stuff we're talking about, kind of going both ways is what I was thinking. But yeah, I appreciate hearing that from Santa Cruz.
I'll say, so I'm based in Iowa, currently. I'm moving soon, but currently in Iowa. And I I think the activism here is much less flashy, but still very kind of like under the radar and very effective. And it's a very the attitude of no one's coming to save us is very prevalent because
Hmm.
politics, like you can't get anything done. And I think that is one thing that really pushes
Yeah.
me to like the organizational side and the business side is because there are people who are concerned about this and saying like, how do I do that? Like, how do I stop buying all of my supplies from Amazon? But I need this
Hmm.
packaging.
Hmm.
What do I do? Very like tactical things like that of like,
Hmm.
and I think people are seeing those lines. So I think the motivations there are definitely the motivations behind the business stream of work as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this goes back to something I was talking about earlier, Julie, and you've been involved in this since the beginning. Is people are busy, people are overwhelmed,
Hmm.
and how to get them their attention when they've got so many other options. And I think the sort of groups that you're talking about, especially the one you work with, um, they're working their butts off trying to literally save people. And
Yeah.
so I'm not sure how to ask anything of them other than offer things to them at this point.
Right.
And, you know,
I think that's true, but I also think the analysis of how we got here is probably similar analysis. So then when you
Yeah.
kind of go upstream a little bit, I mean, completely agree. I'm not saying take, not trying to rob Peter to pay Paul kind of thing, but it's just like looking where there's kindreds, really.
Yeah.
That's
And, you
kind of my
know,
thinking.
yeah, one of the other groups that I and WEAll are part of is this Good Gov LA group that's going to put on a democracy conference, hopefully in the end of July. And, you know, that's going to be looking at like forward thinking,
Yeah.
what are the different levers that we could change in a democracy to make sure that it's healthy and productive and making better policies and so forth. So I think there's a lot of intersection between all the different groups. And, you know, one of the ongoing challenges is how to be smart and strategic about getting people when they can show up and still making them feel like it was a good use of their time and productive and that they want to return. Given that there are so many other crises and needs and, you know, personal matters and so forth. So what is it that makes someone want to participate in an effort, you know? So
Oh, thank you so much, everyone. That was a wonderful conversation. We learned so much about WEAll California. So David is going to upload also the recording online on their YouTube video, and make sure that you check also the website that they have with all the upcoming events as they organize great conversations.
thank you, Anna. And I think I've learned one thing today. I like being in your chair more. So, all right. Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you
Lauren
so
and
much,
Julie and
everyone.
everyone and Joel.
Thank you,
And yes,
everybody.
and
Take
all the
Thank you,
care.
people. All right.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Have a great day. Be well.